So welcome to a new guide on this channel, and on this occasion is going to be about the wave state from KORG. Now this is not a review, it's a complete deep dive guide about the synth, and if you didn't notice, this is the part number 2, and on this one we will talk about wave sequencing. Now if you want to understand what everything else works, not wave sequencing, I'm going to give you cards. You can see the cards right there at the top. I'm going to give you a link to that video, and you can find of course the link on the description. So maybe watching that first is going to be a good idea, because we are going to do a lot of work with wave sequencing, and you're going to need to know how everything else works before we can dive into this. Now this guide is a little bit long because this can do a million things. So everything on this guide is in chapters. So if you look at the description or the timeline, you can jump to a section or skip the ones you don't want. So if you like these guides and you find them useful, remember to like and subscribe. And if you have the money and you want to buy me a coffee just to say thanks, everything is on the description. You're going to find links for PayPal, Patreon, and YouTube. Thanks and all of that. Okay, so let's just begin. Okay, so let's start talking about what wave sequencing is. And maybe you're wondering, why is this dude bringing in optics to explain how wave sequencing works? So this is part of the explanation. You're still on the wave state guide. So I'm gonna use it. Just bear with me. So if you already know how wave sequencing works and the whole idea and theory of how it works, you can skip this and just go to the next section. Now, if you are a little bit confused and maybe have no idea how it works, I will explain the theory of how this works behind the scenes. So right now I'm just using a kind of a standard synthesizer. This is a frequency modulation, and FM synth. It actually is more than that, but it's just like a normal synthesizer. We have subtractive or FM synth. Now, at the end of the day, what they will do, it will use a sound to do something. We use the operators or the oscillators to create an oscillator sound like, and then we just create a sound, and then we create our sequence using whatever sound we generate with this. So when you want to create a sequence, if you think about it, you kind of have different steps. So in this case, this can do 16, but I'm going to do only 4 steps just to keep it simple. All right, so right now this one sounds like that. I want to record the sequence. So in the case of OP6 or OP6, whatever you want to call it, if you go to rec, is going to be listening to record some steps. So I'm going to do a 1 3 5 5 on C minor. So if I go right here, I'm going to make it 4 steps, and that's going to be it. I'm going to get out of the rec mode, and if I play, we get that, right? It's just that, pretty simple. Right, I'm going to go to home, and we get, again, the 4 steps. So if you think about this, we have a sound source. It is going to be our oscillators, and we have 4 steps using the same sound source. So that is the sound. Then we have a pitch. So it's going to be a 1, 3, and a 5, 5. So 1, 3, and then 5, 5. Right? So that is going to be the pitch, the frequency of the keys we play. So then when we play, it's going super fast. But maybe we can go to right here to the configuration and change the rate of this one. So when I play, it's just going to go slower. So if you think about this has a timing. It's going to be the BPM. The same thing, if you go to each step, what you can do, or at least on the OP6, you can kind of make the steps shorter. If I go to the gate of this one, this is what is going to be much shorter. And I modified the gate, and notice that all the steps now, they are just shorter. So now we are talking about the gate. So we have 4 fundamental things on a standard sequencer. We have the timing, the sound, which is going to be the oscillators or operators in this case. We have the pitch, which is whatever we played. And then we have the gate, is the 4 main things of a sequence. Right, so what if we take the same idea to wave state? Now, the idea is just the same. The theory is just the same. The only difference is that this works a little bit different. But the idea of having the steps and having a timing and having a sound or having a pitch, which is what you play, well, that keeps the same right here. The problem is that you have different names and a different way of doing this. So for example, on the OP6 or OP6, you have operators, you have a sound, right? A sound source. So in this case, this has no sound sources. The sound source is going to be a sample. Now, the problem is that with the other synth, you have one single sound source that you can use on the all different steps. It's just the same sound source. What you change is just the pitch. But this can use a different sound source on each different step. So now we will have on the sample side 4 different types of samples. I'm loading 4 different types of samples. So now we are not talking about a single sound to create a sequence. If I play it, it's going to go through 4 different samples. And you have up to 64. Right? So now we don't have a simple sound, we have a more complex sequencer with different sound source on each different step. That's the difference between, the OP6, which is the normal sequencer, and this one. So with the OP6, you could just run your BPM, set your BPM to 110 or 120, and you will always go the same speed unless, of course, you modify it manually. On this one, you have a timing lane, and the timing lane is going to instruct on each step how long that note or how long whatever it is that you're doing on that step is going to last. So now on my timing, what I did on the samples, we have the 4 different samples, but on my timing, notice it's not changing, but we still have 4 steps. I've added 3 more steps, and on this one, we are doing different timings. This is just going to last something. This is going to last something different. This is going to do something else. And then at the end, we're going to do something else. So if now I play, we are not talking about, the same rate. We are talking about adding different times and it's very specific times to each different step. So each sample will have a different duration. It's not the same as the other one, but yeah, it's the same concept. We have a timing or a BPM. Well, this is timing, the other one is BPM. On the other one, we have sounds. On this one, we have samples on each step. So then, notice that it says pitch right here. So we have the same idea. On the other one, the pitch is going to be whatever we play on each different key. We play a C, we play a D, and so on, and so on, and so on. So this has the same idea. We can create multiple steps, and each step will be going to that sample and alter the pitch. So if I go to my pitch lane and I add more steps, remember that you can go to each different steps and change the properties. So this one might be going up in pitch or down in pitch and so on and so on and so on. So now for each step, we can control the pitch of the whole sequence, just like we had on the other one. But on the other one, we just type it manually, right? We just type on the keys. On this one, we program what the pitch of this one is going to be. So now if I do something, this one is going to 0, this one is going 1 down, 1 octave down, 1 octave up, and 1 octave down. So it's pretty much what is going on. And again, we have the same concept. We can handle pitch in some fashion. The only difference is that it's implemented or we do it on a different way than the other one. But the theory is just the same. So on the other one, we could do gates, right? Just to make the step shorter, or we can make it larger, right? So on this one, notice that you have a gate lane. So if you go to gate, it's going to be the same idea. I can go step by step, make them shorter, or just make them wider. The same idea. So we know that we can compare the timing with the BPM. We can compare the sample with the oscillator. We can compare the pitch with the pitch of the OP6 and the gate, for the gate of the other sequencer. But notice that we have more lanes right here. We have the shape. So the shape and the step sequencer are things that we can use to run a modulation on each different step in a certain fashion. Okay, so now we need to start talking about theory. We need to start with this. So we need first to learn how to handle the steps that we have right here and the little lanes that we have right here, how we can navigate them and how to recognize them and how we can add steps to create all this, all this sequence. So first, before we can create wave sequences, we need to learn how to navigate the lanes and how to navigate the steps. So first of all, if you go home, if you go to perform and you are on the lane where the wave sequence lives, it's going to show you right there what is going on, how many steps you get, what it's doing, is it looping, is it starting, is it stopping. So right here, it's going to show you your whole kind of a performance on all the other different lanes. Notice that you have the lanes names right here. So with the initial performance wave sequence, when you play something, it's just going to be something very Very dull. You just have 2 different steps. So how can you know how many steps you have? So if you're in set lists, nothing is going to show, and it's because set lists, it's something different that we need to discuss much later. When you want to work with the steps and lanes, you need to be standing on wave sequence steps. So of course, you can have a sequence on each different lane, and of course, the sequence are separate from each other, right? So this one will have a different sequence, and this one will have maybe a completely different sequence. So whenever you're standing right here, let's go to the step number 1. It will tell you right here information about the step, but if you go to the next ones, it's going to give you the same information, but information for something else, for the pitch, the sample, the timing, and then we will talk about the master. The master is something different. It's all about timing, sample, pitch, shape, gate, and step sequence. So if you're a little bit overwhelmed with all the options, actually you don't need to be, because when you go to some place right here, it's going to show you something on the screen, but pretty much all the screens on all the different lanes it's pretty much the same. So we're going to try to break it down so you can identify them, and then you'll learn how to navigate them. So notice that if I go to maybe the timing right here, so I'm going to go to the timing lane, and I go to this step. Right here is showing us something. It's telling us, okay, so we are on the layer A, and this is the timing lane, and the keyword right here is going to be step. Now, notice that you have 3 different pages, and this is key right now. We have 3 different pages. The page in the middle, which is, the second page, is going to be all about the step. So if you're standing on this step, this will tell you, okay, so you're standing on A1. This is a type of timing. So you have notes, you have the duration of the steps, and some other options that we will be talking about later when we go lane by lane, explaining what each lane will do. But the second page, it's always about what this step properties you can use to, of course, do something only to this step. If I go to the step number 2, you have different numbers, you have different values, and notice that the values are changing. And it's because the second page, it's about only this step within the timing lane. So that the second page is going to be the same for all the other lanes. If I go to the sample one, if I go here, we are going to be standing on this step, but on the sample lane. And this is going to be using that wave sign JP. And you will have a lot of options that belong to the sample lane category. And if you go to the second one, it's the same deal. Something is going to change, but everything keeps consistent. If you go to the pitch, same deal. You're going to go here, and the second page is going to be about pitch of this particular step, not the other ones. If I go here, it's just going to be for the A2, and so on and so on. Same thing with the page, with the shape. If I go here, information about the shape of this particular step, and this is going to be about this step. And if I go to gate, same deal. I'm going to go right here, information about the gate. And then I go to step sequence, and it's going to be information about that step. And so again, the second page, it's about the configuration or the options that we have available to do something with this step. All right, so what are the other ones? So if I go back to the timing one, to the timing lane, we're on the first one. When we tap, we're by default going to the second one. But if we do shift or we tap on the lane, it's going to take us to the first one. So notice that right now, it's not saying something about a step. It's just saying timing lane. So the first page, it's always about the configuration, the main configuration of the whole lane. So it's the global configuration of the lane. Same thing with the other ones. If I go to the sample one, this is just going to tell us where it's going to start, where it's going to loop, and so on and so on. It's like the main configuration of the lane. So that is the first page. And this, again, it's consistent throughout the whole, all the different categories, all the different lanes. The pitch, same deal. Shape, same. Gate, same thing. And the step sequence, same deal. So the first page is about the whole configuration of the lane, and the second page is about the step that you have selected within the lane you have selected. So now it's kind of a very easy to identify, right? We only have 3 pages. The first one is the global configuration of the lane, and the second one is the configuration of each step you have selected. Pretty simple. So, okay, so you must be thinking, okay, so we need to learn all the different lanes, all the different options, and, it's just crazy. Well, not really. All the different lanes in terms of options, most of the options are going to be repeating themselves. So if we learn it on just one lane, we're going to be learning it for the other lanes as well. So some very little, small options are going to be changing. And those ones are the ones that we need to learn. So it's going to be easier than, just learning everything, of course. So once you learn the sample maybe and the timing, you're going to be able to understand how the other ones work. So if I go right here to the timing lane and I go to the step A, we know what the page 2 and the page 1 means, but we have a third one. And this is again consistent throughout all the different lanes. So what is that third page? So the third page is a utility. So with this one, with the utility, we can work with the steps. We can cut steps. We can, of course, copy. We can paste. We can insert. We can add steps. So this is, again, a utility. We are going to be selecting and running some functions to work with the steps. Maybe we want to add 8 steps, or we want to cut whatever step or remove whatever step we have selected. Well, that's the utility. And you get the same for all the other lanes. And the utility works exactly the same because the utility, it's about, adding and removing and copying steps. Okay, so this is actually, I'm going to go out and go back to the initial performance, cutting the steps. And for now, we can start with the sample one. So cutting and adding and removing and copying and pasting steps is very important to create a sequence, right? It makes sense. So that is what we need to learn first. Right, so let's learn how to work with steps, and it's like the first thing that you need to learn before you can create sequences. Now, right now, just so we can start from the same spot. I'm gonna go and load an init performance, and we all know how this sounds. It sounds absurd, but that's fine. That's not the point. Okay, so remember that we can go to the utility of each lane and we can work with the steps. We can add, cut, remove, and so on and so on and so on. So in this case, I'm going to be working on the sample lane. So when you go to the sample, it's going to stand you right there. And when you go right here, it's going to show you how many steps you have for the sample. So you have 1 and you have 2. And if you tap on that, it's going to tell you that you are on the A1 and you're using that wave sample for that multi-sample for this, right? And that's how it sounds. If I go to the next one, it's going to sound the same thing. This sound the same way. But we can hear as I hold the keys that it has kind of a transitioning. So if I go back to perform, and it's showing us it's going from 1 to 2, 1 to 2. So we have a wave sequence. It's dull, but we have it. So when we go to the number 2, it's going to stand right here. It's not going to show us how it's moving. And it's because we are here trying to understand what this is doing. So if you want to listen or to audition whatever is that you're doing on each step, there is kind of a trick. You can go to enter and tap on the step and it's going to start blinking. So when this is blinking and this is blinking, it means that you're on the sample lane and you're auditioning or soloing just this step. So now if I play something, notice it sounds very different. And it's because it's just showing me what this wave sample or whatever is that we are doing on that step is all about. If I go to the next one, it's going to be standing on the A1, which is a sine wave. And it sounds, of course, different because that belongs to that step. So just like this, when we create a long wave sequence, we can go one by one, trying to audition whatever it is that we are doing and changing the settings and adjusting the performance or the wave sequence in this case. So to get out of this, you just need to do enter and you're back to your wave sequence. Now, in this case, what we want to do, we want to cut, remove, add, or inject or insert. So this is the step number 1. This is the step number 2, and we are standing on the sample lane. So you always need to be sure where you're standing. So what I want to do, I don't want this. I just want to remove it, right? So what we can do, remember, we can go to the utility and right here we will have a bunch of options. So all the way to the beginning is going to say cut steps, then copy steps, then paste, then insert, and then add steps to the end. So we're going to go through all of this. So if I want to remove a step, or I want to remove this one, what I will need to do, go to cut steps. Now, when you go to cut steps, this can cut many steps, and it's giving you the action right here from step through A2. So if you want to cut this through whatever other step, maybe you want to cut a big chunk of this lane, you can do it by going right here and selecting it. So if I wanted to remove something, it's just going to go through from step A1 through A2. But this is not what I want to do. I want to remove this step. Now the next one is going to be the scope. So the scope is actually something very important, and you could make a mistake and ruin everything that you did. So you need to make sure what you're doing. So the scope is going to be this lane or all lanes. So if you cut something and you cut something to this lane, you're going to be cutting this sound for this lane. If you go and do all lanes, you're going to be cutting or removing the step number 2 for all the lanes, which, might be something that you don't want to do. So if I go to this lane and I'm saying go to A2 and A2, it's going to remove this one. So I'm going to go and press enter and confirm, and there we go. Not again. So if I go sample, notice that we only have one wave sequence. And if I play it, it's not going through the other one. And I'm going to show you visual information because I'm using behind the scenes, the application, the companion app that comes with this, just to show you how it looks if you connect it to a computer. It's just easier to learn. And I'm not going to, show you or do it from here. I'm going to do it all from the synthesizer because this is the whole point of this guide. But if you need a more visual, visual instruction of how it looks, it's going to look like what I'm showing you on the screen. We have, 2 steps for pretty much everything, but we just removed the second step from the sample. So what if I wanted to copy whatever we have right here on the one, which is the wave sign JP? I want to copy this and I want to paste it on the number 2. I want to have the same sample on the step number 2 on the sample lane. Okay, so we do the same trick. I'm going to be standing on the sample lane. I'm going to go to the utility. And the next one is going to be copy steps. Now, since I want to copy the step A, and of course you can copy many steps, you need to select copy. It needs to be on this lane unless you want to copy all. And then select, whatever it is that you want to copy. So we're going to be copying the lane or the step A of the sample lane. So once you're kind of ready, you do enter and it's going to stay in memory. Now, the whole point is that you need to paste it, of course, somewhere. So we cannot, you might be thinking, okay, so now we go to the step number 2 and we paste it. No, whenever you don't have anything, no information, is not going to let you go to that step because you have nothing. So you will need to go to the one or the last or, whatever, you have some kind of information. And then you need to go, since you already copied this, you need to go to paste steps. And this will ask you, where do you want to copy or where do you want to paste it? Now, of course, again, remember the scope is important. And then it's going to say over steps starting at, and then you can paste it whatever, wherever you want to paste it. Now, in this case, if I paste it on A1, you're just going to be replacing the same sound with the same sound. This is just not what we want to do. So I want to say, okay, I want to go to the A2 because it's empty, and I want to paste whatever is that we copied. I'm going to do I'm going to do enter, and it's going to go to the second one. And there you go. We have the 1 and the 2. And if I go to the 2, notice that we are on the different steps, but we have the same sound. So we copy paste it successfully. Now, of course, what if you want to do more? I'm going to go to the second one and I'm going to go to the utility. So remember that we have the scope of this lane. What if I don't want anything that it's on the step number 2? I want to kind of start from the scratch, and maybe I only want to have one single step on all the lanes. So I'm going to go there and I'm going to go to the utility. And what you can do, again, you can go to cut steps. But this time is going to be, instead of this lane, it's going to be all lanes. So this will go to the step you have selected, the step number 2, because it says right there. If you want to change it, you would need to go here and just change it, right? But in this case, it's going to go to the step number 2, and it's going to chop the step number 2 of all the lanes. So if I execute this and I press enter, this is going to be chopping all the steps. Now, if I go to perform, notice that this is much shorter. We just have one single step. And if I show you a visual representation on the screen, we have one single step. For now, I'm just going to keep it on this lane. Now, what I want to do, maybe if we want to keep doing the same thing, let's say I want to copy steps. So I'm going to be copying this lane, which is the A1. So I'm going to do enter, and I'm going to be copying this. But instead, maybe I want to copy all. I just want to duplicate what we have on the step number A. So I'm going to go and say all lanes, and I'm going to copy again. So now we go to the next one, and I'm just giving you, different ways of doing this. So now, since we copied all lanes of the step number 1, what we can do is we can target maybe the A2, and we can paste it. And this is just going to go and copy whatever we have on the step number A for all the different lanes and create a step number 2 for all the different lanes. And from now on, I'm not going to tell you, or not going to, tell you right now when I'm going to be showing you a visual representation of the screen on the screen of the app. I'm just going to go and do it. All right. So, okay. So we have, we know the copy paste for all the lanes and everything else. So now we have more options, and they're just a little bit kind of, I wouldn't say weird, but they're just different. They're not that obvious than copy, and paste, right? Paste, copy, and cut. So we have the next one, which is going to be insert steps. This is a little bit weird. And we have the add steps to the end. This one is a little bit easier to understand. So I'm going to be going to the sample lane, right? I'm just going to go to the sample lane. We need to make sure that we are in the sample. And I'm going to go to the last step that we have right here, which is the number 2. And when I go to the utility, this action is going to be adding steps at the end. And it's just that. It's how it sounds. So you can decide where you want to apply this, all lanes, or maybe this lane. So I'm just going to be adding more steps to the sample lane. So how many steps? Well, this is completely up to you. Maybe you want to create a 4-step sequence and on the sample lane and just keep a 2-step sequence on all the other lanes. Why not? You can do this. So since we want 2 more, 1, 2, and then 3 and 4, we want 2. Once I do enter, it's going to take whatever information you had on the 2, because you're standing right here, and it's going to copy and add and multiply it by 2. So if I go to this one, is do sign, the sign, the sign, and the sign. But the steps are changing, right? So this is a nice way you get to add steps to the end. And notice that you could also do it with multiple lanes. If you want, you can just do the same thing for, all the lanes. All right, so what I want to do, I want to show you the next one, and I'm going to be chopping, in this case, it's going to be this lane, and I'm going to be chopping whatever we have on the A3 and then through the A4. I'm just going to be removing it, and this is just going to cut those 2 steps. And I'm going to do the same thing, and I want to cut for all the lanes the step number 2. So if I do enter, it's going to chop whatever we have in the number 2. And it's because I want to show you the next one, which is not the add steps to the end, is going to be the insert steps to insert steps. Now, this is kind of like the opposite of add steps to the end. This one, what we'll do, it will insert steps pretty much to the beginning, to the beginning of something. It's going to be A1 in this case. And this is going to, of course, give you a scope of all lanes or this lane. Now, but usually when you do all lanes, it's going to add one more in front of the of all lanes, for all the steps. And what this differs from the other one is that this one will copy whatever is the property that you have right here. It's just going to be copying it to the next ones. But the other one is just kind of not going to do that. The other one is just going to add whatever default property you had for that step, for in memory, for the actual synthesizer. So notice that we have a sign, JWP, and it's going to be 1. Maybe it's just going to do the same thing. Let me go to here, and I'm going to change it to, I don't know, some different sound. Let me just do something like that. It's going to be a different sound. So now if I go there, and I go to the utility, and I go to insert steps, I'm going to be, of course, doing all lanes, and I'm going to do enter. Now, remember, we changed the multi-sample, is a different sample. When I do enter, it's going to go and add a new step at the beginning, right here. But this step is going to be the default one that, we have on the initial sequence. It's just going to be adding steps with the default values for all lanes. It's not going to copy whatever you had selected. Notice that we have a different multi-sample. So that's the difference between the add steps to the end and insert steps. Right, so we need to talk about the sample lane, and we cannot just go and cover the whole sample lane and then go to other sample and there go to other lanes, because we need to use some things in between. So we're going to start with the sample lane. We're going to go and talk about how the loop works, and then we will finish, covering the sample lane. So once we know how the sample and this works, everything is going to get a bit easier. So just to start, I'm going to go back to an init performance, right? So we load something, and then we go to the init performance. And we have the good old init performance. So what I want to do, I want to add different samples, and I want to add 4 steps, and of course different samples to the 4 steps. And we could have already know how to do this. Now remember, we need to go, if we want to go to samples, we need to go to the sample lane. And it's telling us that right now we have 1 sample and then 2 samples, this one and this one. We already talked about this. Now I don't care about the second lane. So what I want to do, I just want to remove it. Remember, you can do shift and go to the utility of the sample lane, and you can target all lanes, or you can target this lane. In this case, I'm just going to be cutting whatever we have on all lanes. I just want to keep only one. And this is gonna be for simplicity. So I'm going to cut all the lanes from the step 2. So now we only have 1 step on all the different lanes. But I want to go to the sample lane and add the 2, the 3, and the 4. And again, we already know how to do this. We are already standing on the sample lane, so we need to go to the add steps to the end. Since we want a 4-step loop or 4-step wave sequence for the samples, we want 3 steps added to the end of this one. I'm going to go and let me go there and do this lane, just to the sample lane. And I'm going to do enter, and we will have 4 different steps with, pretty much the same sound wave for the sample lane. One thing you need to notice, if I play something, notice that there is no kind of a progression. This is just not moving. It's just staying right there. Since we have 4 steps, it should be going from to this, to this, to this, to this, and back and forward. But that is not happening. So remember that when you go to perform, it's going to give you information about what is that you're doing. In this case, right here is telling us, dude, you are looping the step number 1. So that's why it's never going to the 2, the 3, and the 5. You're stuck on the number 1. And this is the arrow pointing there and the arrow pointing there. So yeah, we will need to talk about this, and we will cover this in a second, how this works. But first, what I want to do, I want to select the different multi-samples I'm going to be using on each different step. And for this one, you just don't need to do anything. Remember, you can do enter, and you can select this slot, and you're going to be soloing this step, just so you can audition whatever is that you want to do. Now, just for to learn this, what I want to do, I want different sounds on each step, and I want very different sounds so we can really identify when we go from 1 to 2 and so on and so on and so on. So in this case, I'm going to be selecting different multi-samples, and maybe I'm going to go to something. Let me just find, I'm going to go to leads. Okay, so I'm going to select this one. This one is from factory. It's wave, pulse, and lo-fi. And I'm selecting samples that are not super short, not percussive sounds. So I'm going to be selecting that one, right? So it's going to have it has a little bit more sustain. That's what I want. We want sustained sounds. And this is just better, because we are learning, and you should use the same. So I'm going to be selecting that one, and that is the one we have on the first one. So I'm going to go to the second one, and I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to select that one. Is a pipe organ. Notice it's very sustained. So I'm going to select that one. We need to go to the number 3 and select a different sound. Okay, so I'm going to go to this one, which is going to be woodwind, and select the 3 flutes. Done. So next one, I'm going to go to the final one, and remember we are soloing. All right, so I'm going to be selecting that one, the 8 cellos and tremolo. Has a good sustain. So I'm going to enter, and now, of course, to get out of that mode, we are going to be going there. So if I go to the beginning, we have that one, and notice that if I switch, again, we have the same problem we discussed. We cannot hear them, and it's because the perform is just stuck on the number 1, which is the first step. So we need to learn how to fix this before we go to the sample lane and we go to each sample to learn how the samples works. So now we need to talk about how the loop and the start and the end works. Okay, so let's talk about this. If you go to perform right here, it will tell you what you're doing in terms of loop and start and end. And they are kind of different things. So you might be starting, and notice that on the is a shift. You know, these are the knobs, and you have the loop start, loop end, but if you do shift, you have the start and the end, and they are different things. So you have a 1, 2, 3, 4 sequence. Now the sequence might start right here and end right here, but maybe you don't want to loop the whole thing. So maybe you just want to loop the 2 and the 3 or the 3 and the 4. So that's why the loop start and the start and end are just different things. Now, of course, how can you do to identify it right here? And it's just a little bit confusing, but once you know, you know. So this one will go and modify the starting of the loop, and this one will modify the end of the loop. So the loop end and the loop start, let me just positioning it right here. There we go. The loop start is going to be an arrow, a thin arrow, pointing that direction, the right direction. And the end, the loop end, is going to be an arrow pointing the left direction, right? Then you have the start and the end. And the end is going to be a square. Notice that right there we get a square. And the start is going to be like a filled kind of a triangle or a filled arrow. That's going to be the start. So pretty much right now what we are saying is that we want to start on the 1, which is this one. We want to end on the 4, but we are looping the 2 and the 3. That's pretty much what we are saying. So I'm going to do something different. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go all the way to the number 4. So in this case, we are looping the last one. This is going to be the end of the loop. And I'm going to move it right here. And we are looping this one, is the number 3. So it means that the sequence will start, because we have that arrow right at the beginning of the number 1. The sequence will start here, it will go here, and then it will go 3, 4. But since we are telling that it should be looping the 3 and the 4, when we reach this section, the loop will start, but it will only loop the 3 and the 4. And this is how it works behind the scenes. So if I play something, there we go. So it starts right here because this is the start, then it goes, and when it reaches the end, it knows that we want to loop 3 and 4, and it's just getting stuck right there. Now by default on the unit, when you start the default patch, the looping is infinite. So if you're holding a key, it will just loop forever until you, of course, release the keys. Now, of course, you can go right here in terms of the loop. You can maybe just do something like that, or maybe just go right here. And notice that it looks like an X right here, but this is actually the arrow pointing to the right and the arrow pointing to the left. So what we are doing is just looping the number 4. So we go 1, 2, 3, and when we reach the 4, we get stuck on the number 4. And this is very useful because maybe you don't want to loop everything. You want to go through a progression, and at the end, you're going to stay on maybe this way with this multi-sample. Now, of course, you can select in betweens. Let's say that you want to maybe loop the 2, and then you want to loop the 3. Now, when you do something like this, you need to understand that the loop will get pretty much what you're doing. So when you enter the loop, it's going to start looping. So I'm going to be doing some playing, goes to the 3, and then it starts looping. So this means that we will never get to the 4 because the loop ends way before, or one step before, the end of the, sequence or our sample lane. So you need to be careful where you select the loop start and end, because you might be getting maybe not where you want. Maybe you want the number 4, so you need to go right there and say that you want to loop the number 4. Now notice that while I'm playing and I'm changing the loops, I'm sorry for that, is adjusting without stopping. So maybe if I go and loop the whole thing, then it's gonna go and do the whole thing. So the loop end and start and everything else right here works in kind of a live kind of fashion. You can change them while you're playing. So remember, when we go to a step, we are watching pretty much what's going on that multi-sample on that particular step. But if we go right here to the main one, to the first page, and we already talked about this, is going to show us kind of the configuration of this sample lane. And right here, you can manually go to the A and select the start, and maybe select the end, or maybe select the loop start, or maybe select the loop end. Right, so you can adjust this manually. So if this is a little bit hard for you to understand, or just to see because it's maybe too small or it's maybe confusing, you can go to the sample right here, go to there, and just adjust this with the encoder. Now notice that it says repeats infinite, and this is what I was talking about earlier. Right now it's going to loop by default always. So maybe I'm gonna select 2, and I'm gonna go back to the perform. We are looping pretty much everything, but maybe I just want to loop the 3 and the 4, or maybe just the 2 and the 3. Maybe why not? We are going to be looping 2 and the 3. So the sequence will always start here. It's going to go there, loop twice, and then it will go out to the number 4. So I'm going to do 1. That's one loop. That's the second loop, and then goes and ends on the number 4. So you can decide how much, how many times you want to loop. It doesn't have to be infinite. Now, there's one more thing that you should know. I'm going to go all the way up and all the way down on the loop and the start end. So then you have the start and the end. And these ones are not for the loop. These ones will kind of pretty much decide where to start this sample. So for example, if I go right here and do shift and I move, and I'm going to be showing you the application so you can kind of get a better visual representation. Notice I am moving right here, the start of the loop, and it starts in a different place. So let's say I'm going to be starting on the number 2. So now when I play, it will not start on the number 1 because we are specifically saying start on the number 2. So it will do 2, then we'll do 3, and then 4. Now the trick and the catch right here is that if we take a look at the right here, or maybe what I'm showing you on screen on the app, the loop, it's kind of grabbing everything. Is 1, 2, 3, 4. We want to loop the 4 steps. So if we offset the starting from the starting of the loop, the start from the loop start, it will start whenever you're saying, but then when you go to loop, it will go and loop whatever you selected, even though it's outside or maybe before the starting of the sequence. So let me just prove it to you. Now, right now, it's just going to be playing. It's going to start on the 2 because we decided that we should be starting on this one. But when it reaches the end, it will loop, and it will loop from the 1. So there's a catch, with the loop start and the start. You can kind of offset them. Now, with the loop end, or the end, is going to be a little bit different. You can go and change the loop end, or you can change the end. The problem is that when you change the end, it will move. Maybe I made a mistake right there. I need to do shift. When you move the end, it will move by default the loop. So it will move the end, but if the loop is on the same spot that the end, it's going to move the loop as well. So if I play something, we will never be going to the 4. Right? So that's pretty much it. Since now we know how to loop, for now, I'm going to go to shift. I'm going to select that I'm going to put that we want to select 1, 2, 3, 4 for start and end. And for the looping, I want to loop the whole thing. And what we need to do now, we need to kind of learn all the options that we have right here. Right, so we just covered part of the sample and how the loop works. So we need to finish with the sample. And then we're going to go, to all the things, and we're going to go to the other lanes. Now, in this case, we need to finish with the sample. So I'm going to go to the sample number 1. And remember, when you tap on these ones, if you're select on the sample lane, it will take you to the second page that will show you some of the things that you can do on each sample. And some of these options are just pretty straightforward. For example, if you go right here, you can change the multi-sample mode. We already did that one, but you can change the octave, or you can change by semitones, or you can just fine-tune the sound. If I do enter and solo that one, remember that you can change the octaves or go by semitones. Pretty simple. Or you just can fine tune it. There we go. Pretty simple to understand, very kind of very straightforward. Now then you have the trim. So the trim cannot go up in volume. The trim, it will just go low in volume. It just will lower the volume. And so in the case of this sample, they are non-available. Now if I go to other samples, this one, the second one, non-available. But if I go to this one, notice that we have it. Now, this options, the channel is going to be a stereo left or right. And, it's kind of a, the stereo, just the stereo left or right. Now, some samples, it depends on the sample, how it was recorded. Now, the other ones, they're pretty much mono. Now, this one, it's just super wide. So we can select if we want the left or we want the right channel, right? Or maybe we want to grab the whole stereo and just get the stereo. Notice that it's just much silent because we are just choosing the left channel, the right channel, or using it in stereo. That's pretty much what it means. Not all multi-samples can do this. They need to be aware of that. Now then you have the offset. So for now, it's just off. Now this, again, depends on the multi-sample. Some samples were recorded on a particular way and some other samples are just different. Now the offset, in this case, if you do take it, maybe move it from off, notice that it gives you first and second. So this is how the multi-sample was recorded. So what this will do, it will just offset the starting of the sample just a tiny bit. Notice that it sounds very different. Sometimes you will have some samples that kind of maybe have no impact. This is kind of a super smooth. So when you offset, it's just going to be much, you're going to get the transient at the beginning. Again, it always depends on, what you want to do with each sample. So then you have the other ones, the fixed pitch and the probability. First, now I'm going to just talk about the fixed pitch. So, for example, if I added maybe a piano samples right here, when we play the keys, the pitch of each key will just, kind of play the piano, play the different keys because we have a piano. Pretty simple. But maybe if you have a different sound like a kick, maybe that sound shouldn't be transposed because every time that we play a key is going to be transposing a kick, and maybe we don't want this. So some samples were recorded on a specific way, so you cannot kind of transpose the kick. But you can choose to do it or you can choose to not do it. So original, it means that this is using whatever configuration the multi-sample has. If it was recorded to be kind of transposed, it's going to be transposed. But if it was a kick that it was meant to not to be transposed, this is just going to use the original configuration of the multi-sampled and nothing will be transposed. You're going to get the same kick on every single key. But you have options. Let's say that I go to off. So off, it means that the multi-sample will transpose, right? You're not using the original configuration. So it doesn't matter if your kick is kind of not transposing or it was recorded not to be transposed, it will still, go and transpose. Since this one, the flutes are transposing on the original recording or sample, we don't get a difference. But yeah, that's what it means. Off, it means that. Now then, you have on. Now on, it means that it will not transpose. But what you're going to be hearing is the original recording of the multi-sample not being transposed. So notice, maybe I'm going to start right here. I'm going to play a key. I'm going to play this one. And notice that right here, let me just show you right here. I'm playing this key and this key. And notice it sounds the same. It sounds the same right here. Right now, same. And now it changes. And this is because they've recorded this is on the multi-sample, same. Now they recorded this one, same. So what it's using is what they use as a recording, right? Because by default, when we add, and we can actually do this, when we record the multi-samples, we don't record every single key. We just record one, and then the program or whatever it is that we are using, it will just transpose a few keys, and then we record the original of this key, and that one will be transposed by the software, and then, so on. That's how we multi-samples. We don't record all the keys we have available. We record some, and then it will transpose the original key we recorded. So by doing on, you're just listening to the original recording, not, transposed. But then you have the on and plus PTLN. So on, it's the same as on. We are using the original samples that we have available for this, for this multi-sample, how it was recorded. But if we use the pitch lane, that's what PTLN means, the pitch lane, this one, we can affect the pitch with this lane. Now, we don't know how to do that. We will learn how to do that later. But right now, this one cannot be affected by pitch, will not be transposed. But if we use this lane to transpose it, it will be transposed. That's pretty much what it means. So I'm going to go back to the original, which is the default. So there's one more thing, and it's about the probability. So I'm going to maybe go out of the, of this mode. I'm just going to go right here and go to the sample and just go home. And we can see that this is going, and then it's of course looping and over and over and over again. Right. But you have on each step, notice that we have it on each one, that you have a probability. So what you can do, and this is kind of a random. So right now at 100%, it means that this will always play. The step will always play. But maybe you want to say, okay, so sometimes I want it to play, but sometimes I don't want it. And this one as well. Sometimes I'm gonna give it a kind of a 40% chance. So now when we go back and we play it, let me go back to the sample and go back home. Notice that it skipped that one. That one is playing. Now this one was played, skipped. And it's going to randomly kind of a skip and play the samples depending on the probability. Right, so this is again completely up to you. It adds a little bit more kind of a randomness to the whole sequence. Now in this case, I don't want this. I'm going to go to 100% and 100%. So now if we play something, it's going to go through the whole thing, right? Pretty simple. So I'm going to go back to perform. Right, so we know this. Now, there's one thing that you really are kind of hearing, and maybe you're wondering. Now, notice that when I hold the keys, when we go from one step to the next one, to the next one, and the next one, and so on and on and on, we don't hear the starting abruptly, the abrupt start of the sample. There's kind of a smoothing between the samples as we move from each step from one to the next one. There's a smooth movement. And besides, it's going to, in a certain kind of a speed or rate. So who's deciding this? Who's deciding how much we should fade when we move through the different steps? And who's deciding how fast we go through the whole sequence? Well, that one is going to be the timing lane. And it's the topic of the next section. Before we go to the time lane, I'm going to show you something else that it's going to be super useful, and it's these two notes, these two keys or options. I'm going to stay right here on the sample, and the note advance, we can talk about the note advance first. This one is pretty simple. So right now, I'm going to go and enable it. And notice that when we enable, it's just going to take us there to the sample lane, which is the main one, the main configuration. This is something that you don't see right here, so you need to enable it from here. So the note advance, it means that when you play a key, notice that it will start advancing. And if I hold, of course, it's going to start and advance. Now, if I play the keys just like this, it's just going to go and go and go and go and advance to the next note. Or the next step in this case. Which is a little bit different from this one. When I do the same thing, we are always starting from the first step. Now, the other thing that you can do with the note advanced is that if you start here and you release and you play again, it's going to start where you left off. So if I play again, 3, 1, 2, I release, I play again, didn't work there, go there, 2, I release and go back, there it goes, it starts on the 2, let's go to 3, I'm going to release and start from 3. So it's going to attempt to start where you kind of release the keys. That's the, the note advanced. Now there you have another thing with this one, which is the shift And note advanced that it means that it will play it on a random order. So if I play something, starts on the 3. If I play something again, starts on the 2, and so on, and so on. So it's going to start on a random place on your kind of a step sequence. And if I hold it, it's just going to go forward. And notice, it's kind of a randomish, right? So that's, the random order. Pretty simple. So I'm going to turn it off and turn this off. Now, it says right there, and you get the indication right there of what you're doing. So the loop starts right here, and when it ends right here, the looping is just going to go and do a forward, right? It's going to start and go forward. So that's why, it ends, and when it starts, it goes that way. It's always forward. But what you can do, you can go to the second mode, and when the loop starts, when this ends and it starts, it's going to go back and forward because it's back and forward. Simple enough. Then you have the other mode, which is going to be backwards. If I play something, when the loop starts, instead of just going to the beginning, it's just going to go backwards and then backwards and then, backwards and so on. Right. Pretty simple kind of controls, very easy to understand. So now we need to talk about the good old timing lane. So if you go to the timing lane, of course, and you go to the step number 1, you will be going to the configuration of this particular step. And in this case, this is the one. This one is going to be kind of working for all the different steps that we have on all the other lanes. So you can shift, for example, the duration. Makes sense. Right now, it's working on seconds. So you can, of course, adjust the timing and go faster in seconds. You also have the probability, and this one works just like the sample. Remember, we just discussed this, where you can, have many steps, and some steps are just going to be kind of playing, and some other steps are not going to be playing. So, pretty simple. Some of the options, they're going to be starting kind of to repeat themselves. Now, before we enter and dive into the duration of these steps, I want to talk about why we get this kind of a smoothing between the samples. So this is called X-fade, and we have it right here at the bottom. And of course, it's crossfade. And right now, by default, it's crossfading through all the different samples, and the timing, it's deciding this. So if I go to this step, notice that right here at the bottom, we have a timing. So it's saying that is doing with 800 milliseconds. So it's 800 milliseconds for the fade in and the fade out. So it's fading by that amount, right? So that's, what it's doing. Now, if we don't want to crossfade, what we can do, since we are using, in this case, one single step, we just can go all the way down. And right now we have no crossfading. I'm going to be playing. And notice that now we have nothing. It's just going to the sample. If you go to the sample, you're just going to each step and just playing that sample. There's no crossfading. Right, it's pretty easy to understand. So right now we are selecting this step and we have this crossfade option. So it means if we add more steps, maybe a 2, a 3, and a 4, we can go to the 2 and maybe use some fading on that one. Maybe on the 3, no crossfade. On the 4, we can add some crossfading. So we have this the ability of doing this on a step-by-step kind of a fashion. Or you can just, maybe disable them all. And this is something that we can do from the main panel. If I go right here, notice it says right there, time. Now, we're going to be talking about this one, but if I go all the way off, it doesn't matter that on this step we have, some crossfade. And notice that's not giving us even giving us the option. So for that, just kind of I had a mental breakdown. So right now we are doing something, right? We are doing crossfading. But if I go and turn it off, there's no crossfading. So there's no need to go on a step-by-step if you want to turn them all off, going and doing 0% on all the different steps. All right, so for now, I'm just going to leave it on because I want to show you that when you do crossfading, you can go in shorter times if you wish, and the crossfading is just not going to be that aggressive. It's just going to be a little bit closer to no crossfading, but there's just a tiny bit. Also, you have the option of fade in and out. And this is when it starts and when it ends. So if I go back to the main screen, which is the configuration of the timing lane, notice that the options are pretty much the same we get on the sample lane. And everything kind of starts to repeat. And I kind of told you before that once you learn the sample and the timing, everything is just going to get easier because it's the same options. Well, we're kind of starting to see this. We still have the start, the end, the loop start, loop end. We can use presets, which is something that we will talk about later. Right now, we use the default preset, which is pretty much nothing. And then we have the repeats for the loops. So again, it's just the same. Now in this case, we have a speed, and this one, of course, will change or alter whatever speed we have. If I go up, it's just gonna go faster. Right, that's it. It's a modifier. We're just altering that. In this case, by default, it's gonna be 1, and 1 it's completely equal to. Let me go back to 1. It's completely equal to the amount of seconds that you have right there. Now, of course, you can go right here and offset the timing, so it's going to be super fast. And if you go to sample, we can just see it going on. Right. This could be, kind of a cool sound. All right, so I'm going to go back to the timing. So that's it, pretty simple. We know how to alter the duration, the probability, it works the same as sample. What if I go to the other one? We know these options. Now there's one little kind of a tiny thing. What if I don't want to use, in the case of that, we are using, let me just go here. We are using time. In this case, we are doing some crossfading. What if I don't want to use seconds? What if I don't want to do this? I can go right here. And we have an extra option that says tempo. So tempo, it means that it will use whatever tempo you are using or BPM you're using on, this patch, this performance. So if you go to the next one, now the crossfade is going to be in with subdivisions. So, we go faster or we can go slower, but it's going to be listening to whatever BPM you're using. Right, so again, this is completely up to you. And this is going to be a scalar. It's going to be a bit more obvious when we use it on a different place, but we are going to be using it in a second. So, okay, so that's it. You can use subdivisions, and it will multiply whatever it is that you're doing. So if right now it's 1 of this, it's going to be 2 of this, or 3 of this, or 4, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now, it's not that obvious to hear with the crossfade. So, what if we wanted to do the same thing with the duration? Right now, we are using seconds. And sometimes it's just a little bit hard to control. Because right now, maybe, again, going on seconds, we need to maybe sync this to some tempo because we want to play it with some other track or something else. How can we turn this into subdivisions instead of seconds? So, okay, so for now, I'm just going to go and turn the phase to the X fade to off. So notice if you go all the way to the timing, right there at the bottom, it says tempo. So you don't have an option to turn on this kind of a tempo or sync. So what you can do is do shift and you tap the timing so the tempo is on. And notice that some options are just changing because we are enabling this tempo feature. So this what we'll do, it will just turn the duration from seconds or milliseconds to subdivisions based on your tempo, the tempo you're using. So if I go back to the main one, of course, we have some other new options right now. The speed, of course, is going to change. And it is that we are multiplying, right? And if we can go down, it's going to go slower. Or you can go normal, and it's just going to be whatever subdivision you're using. You can also do swing now. And of course, this is just pretty obvious. Just going to do swing. In this case, I'm not going to use it, but what you can do, you can go right here and just change the duration. So now, of course, it's just going to be a little bit more easy to control if you're just trying to sync to some tempo. And of course, depends on your performance. All right. So now, of course, we are using this step as a whole. This step controls everything that happens on the rest of the sequences, right? It will decide how fast we go through all of them because we have one and we are looping it. But, this whole synthesizer is about creating performance. So maybe what you want to do, you want to create different steps, or maybe have 4 or 5 or 8 steps with different timings, so we can have kind of an evolution, or we can have, just a different thing. We can go through different times. So how can we do this? So we kind of already know this. It works the same way than the sample. We need to go to this one, and the third option is going to be, of course, add steps, the utility. And we can do, add steps to the end, or maybe copy this one. We already did this with the sample lane. And again, it works the same exact way. So in this case, I'm going to be adding steps to the end, and it's going to be this lane, and I'm going to be adding 3 because I want 1, 2, 3, and 4. I want the 4 steps. So right now we are using, that. So I'm going to do enter, and there we go. So we have a 1, a 2, and a 3. So if I go to step 1, we are using that. Step 2, same thing. Step 3, same thing. And step 4, we are using the same duration. Now remember that when you add steps, you need to make sure that, you are using the whole thing, because right now we are just doing the same thing with it before. We are looping only the first step. So if we change the duration of this ones, nothing will happen because we are using this one. Now, of course, when you want to use the whole thing, you need to use your loop and your loop start and decide the end and the start. So right now, the end and the start are in the right position, but what we want to do is we want to loop the whole thing. So we're going to loop from the beginning and loop from the end. So now if I play something, notice that the timing lane is going to start to move. And this is the timing lane, it's not the sample lane. If I go to the sample lane, of course, we do the same thing. It's going to show us where it is on the sequence. Now, the trick right now, of course, if you're trying to add different times right here, different subdivisions, you need to go on a step-by-step kind of a thing and just change whatever it is that you want to do. So I'm going to do an 8, I'm going to do the 3, and do an 8 again. So we have a quarter, we have an 8, and I'm going to go to this one, and we can be doing a 16. So there we go. So we have a quarter, then 8, 8, and 16. So now, of course, the times are going to be changing. If I play it, it's going to be different. Let me go to the timing and just, have a visual reference. This is lower, faster, faster, and then super fast. And this is how the timing lane works. So right now, of course, we have the X fade kind of turn it all the way off, but you can use a little bit of kind of an X fade. Now the thing is that when you turn it on, you're gonna need to go and maybe go and do a step-by-step right here to change whatever it is that you want to do, if you want to change them. And if you want to offset, of course, the values from step to step on the timing lane. But right now we are just kind of doing a little bit of fading. Alright, so you can do that, of course. I'm going to turn it off for now. So one thing that you can do, and I'm going to kind of repeat it right now, because at this point, I'm kind of repeating myself. Right now, what we are doing, we are looping the starting of the timing lane, step number 1, and then we go to the 4, and then the whole thing starts over. But you can start offsetting this. So let's say that the loop start is going to be on the number 3 or something like that. So we're going to go to this one, and when the loop kicks in, the timing is going to be looping this. But notice that the sample lane right here is not looping. It's still going to go through its own thing. But the timing is going to loop, so the whole sound is going to be changing. But the sample lane is just still going from 1, 2, 3, 4. But the timing lane, of course, it starts in a different way, and then starts looping. So this is kind of a very powerful kind of a thing with this synthesizer, because all the different lanes can do the same thing. You can offset the loop and the timings, the start, the loop end, and when you reach to a section, maybe you're going to be looping something, and the other lane is going to be doing something else, and the other lane is just going to maybe be longer and then start looping much later. So you can create this kind of a combinations of different times and different things, and create amazing sounds. So you can do this, of course, with all the lanes. So I'm going to telling you this right now, and I'm not going to repeat it, that you can do this. And, we're going to be saving some time because this guide is just kind of long enough already. So that's it. That's how the timing lane works. It wasn't that hard, right? And this is because we talked about the sample lane and the loop and everything else. So the timing lane was a little bit easier to understand. The same thing is going to happen to the pitch, the shape, the gate, and the sequence. Everything else as we move forward is going to get easier and easier and easier. All right, so we need to talk about the pitch lane. And for this one, I'm going to start over. And I'm going to go back to an init performance. And we get the good old-fashioned nothing. All right. Okay. So that's fine. That's fine. So what I want to do, we want to again go to the pitch and I want to create some kind of a, some kind of a thing right here. So what I want to do, I want to add more steps and I want to add more steps to all the lanes. And what I want to do, I want to create a bass and kind of create a performance, with a bass, just kind of create a riff when I play a key. So, okay, so right now I'm going to go to the sample because we want to, maybe select the sample. And I'm going to go right here to the step number 1. And I want to maybe first go here to the step number 2. And I'm going to go to the utility. And for now, I'm just going to be cutting steps. I want to cut steps for all lanes of the A2. So I want to just chop the step number 2. I want to just get them off. So I'm going to go and cut all steps. It's going to look something like what I'm showing you on the screen. So, okay, so now I'm going to step number 1. And what I want to do, I want to select the sound that we're going to be working with. Since this is going to be a bass kind of a performance, I want to select some kind of a bass. So let me find a bass I like. All right, so I'm going to be using that one. It's going to be on synth, and then bass sub 3 is under the category of bass. And this sounds like it sounds like that. It's okay. So what we have is something like that, right? Pretty simple. Sounds kind of super cool. So we need to be on the step number 1. And what I want to do, I want to add more steps to the end. So we need to go to the last one. And remember, the option is add steps to the end. You can add steps just for the sample lane. We are standing on the sample lane. Or you can add to all the lanes, right? So in this case, I'm going to be adding to all the lanes. And just going to be duplicating whatever we have on the step number 1 for, maybe 8. That's something, normal. I'm going to do 8. So I'm going to do enter. And now we have something of, like what I'm showing you on the screen. So I don't have to, go one by one and just show you. So we have the same timing for the 8 steps, the same sound for the 8 steps, and the same pitch, shape, gate, and step sequence. So we have the same all over the place. Now, if I go to perform, this is going to be looking something like that. Now, if we think about this, we are just going to be using the same sample. It's just going to be this sample. We don't need to add that sample to all the steps on this sample lane. It's just kind of makes no sense. So if you think about this, if you want to clean your performance, and this is a good idea to clean whatever you have right here so it's easier to read, it's a good idea maybe go to the sample and decide, okay, so I'm going to use multiple samples or just one sample. I'm going to use one sample, so it just makes no sense. So I'm going to go right here to the utility and say that I want to cut steps. Now I want to, from all lanes, I'm going to say just this lane. And I'm going to select, okay, I'm going to start on the A2 and I'm going to finish on the A9, which is the last step. So when I just chop it, now the performance is just a little bit cleaner. We're going to be using one sample and that one is looping. Same thing with the timing lane. If I go to the timing lane, we maybe don't need a lot of steps because we need to do a lot. We will need to do a lot of work. So maybe we just need one. Why, using 8? Same idea. We go. Made a mistake right there. I'm going to go right there. Going to go to the utility. We're going to be cutting steps for this lane. And we're going to start on the 2 and we will end on the 9. And there we go. Now we have one thing that's going to be the timing. Then we have one single sample. And then we can work with the pitch and the shape and so on and so on and so on. So sometimes it's a good idea to clean whatever is you're doing on your performance. So I could do it with the other ones, but I believe you understand my point, yeah? So I'm going to just go ahead and start with the pitch lane. So the pitch lane, what we'll do, it will, of course, change the pitch on each step. If I go to the pitch, we are standing on the pitch, and we have this one, this one, this one, this one. We have 8 steps. Now, the thing is, right now, that we have the same problem than before. We are looping just the first one. So if I play something, nothing is going to happen. It's just going to go through a progression. It's going to go and go and go. But we are not moving the pitch. That's why this one is stuck right here. We are looping this one. So on the pitch lane, I'm just going to maybe select the first 4, and we are just going to be looping the first 4. And we can even select the end. We don't need 8 steps if you don't want to. So now if I play it, it's going to go through 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then go back to the beginning. If you want to do 8, you can do it. Kind of I messed this up. I'm adding a 9, but that's fine. Right. So again, you just need to decide what you want to do and just clean your performance. So, okay, so now we want to work with the pitch. And right now we are not doing anything. So what I want to do first, I want to go to the timing. And all the things that we are doing are things that we learned on previous sections. That's why I'm not kind of repeating and explaining all over again. So once I do shift and timing, when we go to the timing lane, we can use on this step, we can use, subdivisions. Now, what we are doing right now is going fast, and we have a crossfading. So what we are doing, if I go to the pitch, we are skipping steps because the crossfade is super long and the note is just, fast. So when the crossfade on the timing right here, and this is something actually important, the crossfade is longer than the timing, than the duration, you're just going to skip steps. And that's something sometimes it's not good. Now in this case, I don't want the crossfade. Let me go to this one, the timing, and go back here and disable the X fade. So now we go right here to the pitch and we go one by one. That one's going to sound a little bit better. So now the trick is that we want to modify the pitch on each step. So maybe the first one is going to start, maybe if I play a C, if I go right here, it's just going to be a C. But maybe when we go right here, we want to do something else. So I'm going to go to this one, and it's going to show you the main panel of the pitch. And this is pretty understandable. We get the probability, which is something that we already explained with the sample and the timing. Pretty simple. You get your transposed and your tune. And right here, you can transpose by semitones on a step by step. So maybe this one is going to be 3 semitones up. And of course, this one you can go by cents. In this case, I'm not going to do it. You can go to the 3. And this one is going to be 7 semitones up. And this one, it's going to be 3 semitones up. Right? So now if I play it, and I'm going to be playing one single key, the C3, I guess it is. We get that. So, yeah, so that's what it does. And if I show you on the screen how it looks in a much more visual way, you're just going to each step, and in each step, we are just altering the pitch. That's the pitch lane. I know it sounds silly, and it's super simple, and you might be thinking, oh, okay, there's a catch. No, there's no catch. The pitch lane, you add steps, and then whatever pitch you are going to be using by semitones or by synth is going to, of course, modify or alter the sample that you're using by, some semitones up or some semitones down. That's all. Now, there is a catch because you have some more options on the pitch ones, but you don't need to use them if you don't want to. So I'm standing on the pitch, and I'm going to go to the 1, and maybe I'm going to go to the first page of the pitch lane. Notice that we have the same options. We have a preset that we're going to be talking about later, the loop start, the loop end. We already know those ones. You have the repeat. You will already know that one. And then we have two new ones. We have the use shape, and then we have the fit scale. Okay, so first I'm going to tell you about the fit scale. So what we did is a 1, 3, 7, 3, which if you think about this, it's a minor arpeggio, right? It's just a minor arpeggio. Now, when you use the fit scale, what you're doing is you're forcing whatever you did on the pitch to be adjusted to kind of a sync with a scale. In this case, we are doing a C minor triad. So this one is going to be a C major. So if I turn it on, it's going to sound different. Now we are doing a C major triad, and if I turn it off, it's a C minor triad. So you can use the fit scale to kind of adjust whatever you did on the pitch on each different, on each different step to adjust the values to fit the scale that, maybe you want. How it works behind the scenes is that whenever it goes, let me just go maybe right here, and we go to this one. This one we are going 3 semitones up. No, that's fine. So what it does, and let me make sure this is on. It's on. Okay. So what it does is going to listen to whatever you did right here, and it's going to ask, is that pitch within the scope of a C major scale? Yes or no? Yes, it's just gonna use it. No, what it will do, it will go here and shift the semitones. Is going to go up or down closer to a note that fits the C major scale. So let me give you an example. Let me just go and do 1 semitone on this second step. So now if I go to the pitch and maybe go to perform, notice that I did 1 semitone right here, and it's not doing 1 semitone. It's doing C, C, and then goes to the rest. But why? I did 1 semitone. Now, of course, 1 semitone, if I press a C, is going to be C sharp. And C sharp doesn't belong on a C major scale. So what it does is going to move this 1 semitones closer to a key that belongs to C major. And in this case, it's C. So it's kind of shifting this behind the scenes to 0 semitones. So it's doing 2 Cs. Now, of course, if I go here and I move up, it's moving up to the next one. And then it's going to do the same thing. It's going to adjust whatever it is that you're doing. Notice that right now it's just kind of not doing anything. And at some point, it's just moving it. It's just adjusting whatever it is that you did to fit whatever scale that you use. So then we have the use shape, and this is a weird name. Now, when it says shape, it's talking about this shape, and it's about the shape lane. Now, we're going to be talking about the shape lane in a second. So what happens if I turn this on? I'm going to turn it on, and you're going to listen how this sounds. I'm going to be pressing just the C key. So what do you think is happening? So what it does, it's going to do some modulation to the pitch. Now, the shape lane is something that we can use to run modulations, and it also works with volume. We're going to talk about this in a minute. So if I go to the shape and I go right there, we are just using the number 1, and it's because if I go to perform, notice that we only loop the shape of 1, right there. So we are not using anything else. So by default, this is a triangle. So the pitch is using this triangle like a kind of an LFO, and is modulating whatever pitch on each different step, and it's doing on a triangle fashion. So that's why we hear this going up and down in pitch. It's using that shape to do a modulation. Now sometimes this could be cool, because maybe let's say that I'm going to shape and I want to go right here, and I can maybe change the shape. And I messed that up. I'm going to go right there and maybe select a different shape. Notice it's going to sound a little bit different. And you have a lot of shapes, man. And I mean a lot. You could spend a whole day just finding cool shapes. That one sounds amazing. Right? It's a very cool feature. Now, of course, we need to learn to control the shape. We are going to be talking about that in a minute. For now, I'm going to go back to here and just turn it off. So, yeah, so that's it. This is the whole pitch lane. And again, notice that as we move to the next one and the next one and the next one, everything gets super easier, just easier to understand. So we use the steps just to alter the pitch. So, okay, so let's go to the next thing and talk about the shape. Right, so we need to talk about the shape lane, and we could have already noticed the shape lane, how it works on the pitch lane, but now we need to just cover the shape lane, right, and just, use it. So, okay, so maybe you're thinking, okay, so we have a shape, and on each step, we have a shape, and we can use that shape to do whatever we want. Maybe use the shape to use a modulation or to maybe modulate the cutoff or do something like that. Well, not really. You cannot do it at least directly from here. But by using this and a combination of the step sequence, you can do something like that. We're going to talk about that when we get to this one. So the shape lane, what it can do, it can modulate the volume, and it can modulate the pitch, just like we did earlier. And what it will do, it will work with the step sequencer as well. So we need to get there first. Now, by default, the shape on a default patch is going to be a triangle. If I go to perform, notice that we are looping the shape. So we are always using the first step. If I play something, we are always using the first shape, which is a triangle. That's fine. So I'm going to go here. And now what we need to do, of course, we need to select the shape. Now, the thing is that this one, if we select the shape, nothing is going to happen. Now, remember that the shape, what it can do, it can modulate the volume. That's what it does. And of course, it will do other things, but by default, it's the volume. So if I go right here, you have the same options. You have the presets, the start, the loop, so on, blah, blah, repeats that we already discussed on all the other lanes. But you have something that says shape controls volume, and by default, it's off. So this, what it will do, it will control the volume and it will modulate the volume up and down, following whatever shape you select. So in this case, if I go there, I'm going to just turn it on. So right now, remember, we are looping just one single step. If I play something, we can hear the effect. If I go to this one, we are using a triangle. So on each different step, it's just modulating the volume on a triangle fashion. Just like, having an LFO that re-triggers on every single time. And the duration of the LFO is just exactly the length of the step. That's pretty much it. Now, of course, the difference is that you have a lot of shapes. And I mean a lot. And they're really cool. Notice that when you go to 2x, it's just going to be 2. And as you go up and up, you're going to go to 3x, and you have 3. Right? Super cool, man. It's just fantastic. And you get 4. Right. So you can, all off. If you go all the way down, it's going to be all on, so you pretty much have nothing. Just on, right? Just doing no modulation. So of course the fun part starts when you add more steps and you start changing the different shapes so you can have different modulations on the different steps. Right now, again, we are just using the step number 1. We are looping that on the shape. But maybe I don't want to do this. I want to go right here and loop it, and I'm going to be looping 1, 2, 3, 4. Since 1 is a triangle, 2 is a triangle, 3 is a triangle, and 4 is a triangle, we are doing pretty much the same thing. But we can go on a step-by-step and change what we are doing. This one, I'm just going to leave it all to off. I'm going to go to the second one, and I'm going to do something. I don't know what I'm going to do. Let me just find something. All right, so I'm going to do that one, the 2x, x even, or something like that. Yeah, I'm going to do that one. I'm going to do that one, 2x logarithmic exponential fall. And on this one, the last one, it's going to be log down. So, of course, now we need to make sure that we are looping the 4. That's, we need to make sure. And when I do it, that's how it works. It's fantastic. So I'm going to be showing you the application so we can have a more visual reference of what we are doing. So what we do is just modulate the volume with whatever shape we selected on each step. And just this and the pitch and the samples on the step-by-step and the timing, you can create amazing sounds. Now remember, when you go to pitch, when you go to the pitch and maybe go to right here, you can still use the shape on. It's going to sound a little bit weird, but it could be cool. Right. In this case, I'm just going to turn it off, and I'm going to go back to the shape and perform. Now, when you go to each step, let me go maybe to this one, maybe not this one because it has nothing. I'm going to go to the second step. So you have more options right here. Of course, you can change the shape. We kind of already talked about this. So you have the offset, the level, the phase, and then we have this one that we need to talk about when we learn the gate. So first we need to talk about the offset. So offset and level, they kind of work together. Now offset, what it will do, it will offset the waveform or whatever shape you have right here. And you could think about this as an ADSR kind of a thing. So it's going to go up, offset it up, or offset it down. You know, it's going to do it like this. Maybe you're wondering, oh, it's going to do it like this. No, it's up or down. That's why it kind of works together with the level. If I go here and I start offsetting, notice it sounds a little bit different. We don't get those going down peaks. And if I go all the way down, every time that we hit this part, you know, the down pockets, it's just going to be going really down. So we offset up and down, and this is going to affect, of course, how it sounds. Now, of course, this works with the level as well. If I go up, just going to change it a little bit. If I go down, it's just changing it again a little bit. So this kind of they work together. And what they do pretty much, they change how they sound in terms of how it begins and how it goes down. So if you have something like the one we have right here, it's just going to, you know, make it shorter. It's going to make this one shorter in this case. So I'm going to go back and just kind of make it to 0. I'm not going to do any offset. So if I go right here at the bottom, we have the phase, and this one works just like the phase of the LFO, right? Right now, the shape starts at the very beginning of the gate of each step. Sorry, not gate, each step. So, of course, if we offset this shape, is going to be kind of an offset by, you know, some amount. So we're going to be starting earlier, or we're going to start later. Again, works just like offsetting the LFO. So if we offset it, notice we get a clicky sound. So yeah, we are just kind of offsetting it. Now, depends on the shape. This is just going to sound a little bit differently. But again, works just like offsetting the LFO. And we already talked about this on the first video and how that works. So yeah, we are just offsetting the phase. Notice it sounds a lot different. Alright, so of course, we can leave it to 0. We already know the probability with, you know, is something that you get on all the different lanes. And you have something right here that calls a scaled shape. So we are going to be learning this one when we talk about the gate. Because if we don't know how the gate works, I cannot explain the shape, right? I cannot really. We need to learn how this works in order to explain this one. So if I go to the gate, notice that right here, we are only looping the first step of the gate, so we are using the same gate for pretty much everything. If you're wondering, okay, so what this will do? Well, this is just like a normal step sequencer gate. It's just going to make the step shorter, or it's just going to make it full width, pretty much. So there's not much to explain right here. Let me just go lower. So when you go to the step, you have the gate length, and again, the probability we already discussed. So this will adjust the length. Since we are using one step to rule all the steps, if I go down on the length, it's just going to be shorter. That's it. That's what it does. Now, notice it sounds a little bit weird. And I'm going to tell you why in a second. But this is just like, a normal step sequencer. We go down, super short, and if you go full, it's going to be 100%. Really simple. Now, if we go to the main, kind of a panel or a page of the gate, notice that we don't have extra options. We just get the normal ones where the loop starts, or the sequence starts, and the loop and the repeats. We don't have the special options because the gate is kind of a very basic. It's just fundamental for a step sequence. We just change the length. Now, right? So we are cool on that one. So now what we can do, of course, if you want it, I'm not going to do it, but what you want, you can go and add more steps, add more steps to the gate. And this one is going to be shorter, then this one is going to be wider and shorter and wider. And you just can create, different types of gates with different steps, right? I believe that At this point, you could assume that you could do this. Now, we need to talk about the shape one. Remember that we go right here to the shape, and we have an option that says scale shape. And this one is not so easy to understand. That's why I'm explaining this right now, because now we know how the gate works. It's something super simple. So what the shape does, this one, the scale shape, this property, when it says scale shape and it says gate, it means that if the gate is short, it's not super wide, we make it short, like, I don't know, 50%. The envelope or whatever shape we have right here is going to be kind of adjusted to whatever length the gate has. So if the gate is 50%, this is going to be kind of a resized to 50%. So of course, when we place something, it will not kind of affect whatever motion that we are doing right here. It's understandable. So if we make the step on the gate, we make the gate 50%. Let me just go and do it right now. I'm going to go and do it 50%, something like this. So now, of course, the gate is just much shorter. All right. So if I go to shape, what's happening behind the scenes, now everything is super fast. So this one is going to be kind of a resize to 50% to fit the length of the gate. That's what the scale shape is. It's scaling the shape to fit the gate. Makes sense. Now, the thing is that sometimes if you make the gate super short, it's going to sound a little bit weird, like it's happening right now. So that's fine. Now, right here, you have another option that is going to be truncate. Now, what this does, it means that it will not resize whatever it is that you're doing right here, whatever shape. So if the gate is 50%, it's kind of like that, it will not resize it. It will just kind of chop whatever exceeds the gate, the gate width or the gate time, whatever you want to call it. So it's not resizing it. So notice that it sounds a little bit different right now. Maybe we can go to slower times, but And I'm gonna go maybe to the gate. Maybe we can make it not that, small, because 50% is just way too much. There we go. So I'm gonna go shape, back to shape. And this one, it's truncate. Now we are doing this on the step number 2. So instead of adjusting the width, it's just kind of making it and chopping it right here at the 70%. We are not listening to the full shape because it's being truncated. We chop what's left. And that's pretty much what this function means. And again, I've told you that I couldn't explain how this works without knowing what the gate will do. By default, it will scale it. Okay, so now we need to talk about the step sequence lane. And for now, I'm going to go to the shape. And remember that we are using that volume. So I don't want it. I just want to get rid of that for now. And it's going to be a little bit easier to kind of hear what we are going to be doing. So I'm going to be turning it off. So now we are not using the shape, right? Now also, I will go to the timing lane. And I want to use maybe the first one that it's a little bit slower. Maybe let me go to the timing. Actually, we have one. I'm going to go to the timing. And just going to make it slower. It's going to be a little bit more kind of a boring, but it's a bit easier to understand. I know it's boring as hell. Super boring, but that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to go to the step sequence. Now, the step sequence, it's something that we can use if I go, we are on the first one, but if I go to the step 1, the one of the step sequence, it's something very easy to understand and to use. We have a type and we have a value, and everything else is we kind of already know. It's telling us the step and the probability that, of course, we already know how to use. So how this works is that we use that value that could be either positive or could be negative to run some modulation. That's it. Now, of course, we can use it on different ways. That's kind of the complex part about this. But essentially, it's just that. We use it. We say, okay, so let's go plus 50% on the cutoff. And we run that modulation. And when it goes to this step, it's going to do 50% of the cutoff. It's just going to move it and modulate it. It's just that simple. Now, in this case, I'm going to go right here to the step sequence. And I'm going to loop like maybe 4 steps or something like that. I'm going to make sure that everything's like that. So when we play something, it's going to go through all the 4 steps of the step sequence. Now, right now, all the values are just pretty much the same. So what I will do in this case, I want to provide different values for every different step. And later we need to connect it to something so we can, of course, run this modulation. Okay, so the first one is going to be 100, just to give a value. On this one is going to be a little bit less. So I'm going to put it on, I don't know, 18%, something like that. I'm going to go to this one and I'm going to be doing something like 90 or 86. It doesn't matter. This is just, to learn it. And on this one, I'm going to go less and I'm going to go maybe to 50. Something like that, right? So we have different values on the 4 different steps. Now, of course, if we play something, nothing is going to happen. Nothing will happen. We are providing values, but nothing happens because we need to connect the values that we are providing right here to something else. So how can we do this? Well, we do modulations. This is how it works. I'm going to add a new modulation. And what do we want to, what is the destination? So in this case, I'm going to use cutoff because, it's just a little bit easier to hear. Now then we need to decide who is going to be providing the value of, how we are going to be moving the cutoff. What is the source? Well, it's going to be the step sequence lane. And notice that we get it right here. So once we do enter, this is going to be, of course, modulated with whatever value the cutoff. Now, I'm going to adjust the cutoff so we can do something about that, maybe there. And I'm going to go back to that modulation. Going to go to the modulation. And if I do something, it's dark. We are not doing any kind of modulation. Now, you still need to decide how much we want to move this. So I'm going to do something like that. Let me do a bit more aggressive. So notice that now we can hear it's going up, down, up, down. Now I'm going to put a reference on the screen of how the filter is moving by following the step sequence. Yeah. So this is how it works. We just choose the source and we modulate whatever it is that we want to modulate. So very simple. Now, of course, we have all the ways of using this and we have the types. This is kind of a, let's say, complex part. It's not really complex, but we need to do a little bit more explaining. So, okay, so right now we are just modulating this like this. And notice that the filter is a little bit robotic. There's no kind of a transition. It's going up or down, following whatever value we have right here. But there's no transitioning. Okay, so if we go to the step sequence and we go to the main panel of the step sequence lane, notice that we have pretty much the same options that we always have, but we have one more that says use shape. And remember that I've told you that we are going to be using the shape with the step sequence. So right now there's no motion. If we check the shapes we have, and I'm going to put them on the screen so I don't have to go and do it right here. We have the first step, which is going to be nothing, and then we have some kind of a motion right there on the next 3 steps. So if we turn it to on, now it's going to be using, the values that we provided, but also we'll use the shape to provide a little bit of a smoothing to that transitions. So if I do right this, notice that it's doing that. It's kind of a moving and using the shape to do the transitioning. Now, of course, at some point, when you use this, you're going to need to go back maybe and start kind of adjusting the values so you can maybe get something a little bit more, just a little bit better out of this. Let me just go there. That's a little bit better. Right, I'm going to go to this one. I'm going to go all the way. And this one, I'm going to go maybe up. And there's that now we can hear and we can see the movement and the usage of the shape. So really cool. Now we are using very particular shapes. We can maybe use a triangle and just do that motion of kind of a smoothing, the transition or the movement of the cutoff. All right, so I'm going to go back, and for now, I'm just going to turn it off. And right now, we go up or down, right? That's pretty much what we are doing. Okay, so now if I go to the first one, for example, we have for each step, we have different modes. So the first one, it's going to be the default one, and it says value plus, and then continuous mode. And this is actually the default, which is what we are using. Whatever value we put, it's just going to go and use that value to do the modulation, right? And it's continuous because we will talk about this in a minute because I need to do more explaining. And if I don't provide that example, it's just going to be a little bit hard to understand. But basically, this what it does. It's just going to follow whatever value you entered right here and do the modulation. So then we have a new, they have the values times random. And what I did, I went to 0% on all the different values. I did it behind the scenes because, this guide is just so long that you don't need to see it. I just changed the values to 0. So the random plus, what we'll do, it will modulate whatever it is that we want to modulate, but it will do it in a random fashion. And the randomness is going to be bipolar. It's going to go to positives and negatives. So if I go to the first one and I, start adding some values, maybe something like that, maybe go here and do maybe a negative or not. I'm going to go right here. I'm going to go right there and just, add kind of a random values at this point. And if I play something, notice that the cutoff is moving randomly, but it's going to negatives and positives. Right. Again, pretty simple. Now I can even go to this one and make it positive. Everything is going to be positive, and it's still sometimes it's just going to go to negative values. Right. So that's what this mode means. So the next one is going to be, positives. It's just going to go, and it's not bipolar. It's unipolar. So I'm going to go to this one and do the same. Everything, it's going to be unipolar and then unipolar. So if I play something, notice that it's still random. But it will never go to negatives because it's unipolar. It's just plus. It's going to go up, never down. Right. Now then we have another option. And for now, it's just going to go all to continuous. Go there. We have another option, which is the sample and hold mod. I need to do a little bit more explaining with this one because I want to show you some other things that we can do. And when we reach to this one, it's going to be a little bit obvious. Okay, so I want to show you a couple more ways, and for now, I'm just going to go to my mod, and for now, I'm going to delete it and start over. Now, what if you want to run a modulation and decide how much intensity you want from that modulation with the step sequence? Or, the step sequence lane, I mean. Okay, so let's, create a modulation. I'm going to be doing something like that. We're still going to be doing the cutoff, but now I'm going to be using the filter LFO. I'm going to choose that as a modulation source. And I'm going to be doing, something like, 40. So let me just go enter and get there a little bit easier. And now if I place something, of course, this is an LFO. And it's just going to be, just cutting frequencies up and down. Pretty simple, because we are using the filter LFO. Maybe if we go a bit faster, it's going to be a bit more fun. Right. So we are doing this modulation, but we are not using the step sequence. Now, what we can do, we can use the step sequence as an intensity modulation. We can decide with whatever values we want to right here and modulate the intensity that the filter LFO will modulate the cutoff, right? Makes sense. So if I go right here, let me go there, and I do enter, of course, we need to select the, the right thing. And notice that you get controllers, let me go here, you get the mod knobs, and you get generators. Now, in the generators, you can use whatever you want, but at some point, it's going to be showing you the step sequence lane, and we have it right there. So I'm going to do enter. So right now, the step sequence lane is going to be modulating the intensity of, how the filter LFO is going to move the cutoff. Now, right now, if I go to our step sequence, we have some values right here, and this will affect it. Now, just to make it more obvious, I'm going to go to the 0, I'm going to do nothing, or maybe negative, or something like that. Let me do nothing. And this one is going to be all the way up, this one is going to be down, and this one is going to be maybe down. Now, if I go here, there we go. We can clearly hear that. Now this one is doing nothing. This one is all the way up. This one go all the way up. So we are doing full intensity on the step number 2 and the step number 4, right? So we can actually hear that. Right. So this is a nice way of using this step sequence on a different way to control other modulations. So what if we wanted to do the opposite? What if we wanted to modulate the value that we have on each, step sequence with an LFO? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go right there and go to mod, and I'm going to shift mod and kaboom, delete all the modulations that we have available. So what I want to do first, I want to modulate the cutoff with the step sequence lane. So, okay, so I'm going to be adding a new modulation, pretty simple. And I'm going to do the cutoff. That's what we want to do. And I want to use the step sequence lane, right? So we get it right there. I'm going to do enter, and I'm going to modulate this by some amount, maybe 45 or something like this. So if we do something like that, we can hear that modulation, right? Pretty simple. But we are just not doing anything. We are doing the same thing we did before. So what I want to do now, I want to modulate the value. So I'm going to go right here and I'm going to go all the way to 0. And you're going to see, maybe you're saying, why are you going to 0? We are not doing any modulation. You're going to see in a minute. So we are doing nothing, right? So this is not modulating anything because it's always to 0. But the trick is that we want to go right here and modulate this value up and down with an LFO. That's the trick. Now, the thing is that when you add modulations, you need to, do this and move a knob in order to select, the target. And we don't have this available. We don't have that value on the step sequence available, right? So we don't. So right here, when you go this and you maybe go right here and select, you're standing right there. You can do mod and page and do enter, and it's going to take the step sequencer A1 value. Now this works on a step-by-step kind of a thing, right? So now what do we want to do? What do we want to use as a modulation source? Well, maybe the LFO filter. Why not? I'm going to select that one and I'm going to do enter. Now I'm going to go to the filter LFO and I'm just maybe going to select a ramp or maybe just a different, maybe I'm going to go right there and select something like maybe like a ramp up. There we go. I'm going to go to a ramp up. And now, of course, let me go back to mod. This one, the filter LFO, is going to be modulating the values of that one. So if I go up, we're going to be hearing this. Every time that we go to the step number 1, where we have, that modulation assigned, maybe I made a mistake right there. We are going to be able to hear this, and it's going to be this one, sequence A and filter LFO. Yeah. So we are assigning to A1 that filter LFO. So hopefully you understood this. Now, of course, this is a step-by-step kind of a thing. I could go right here and maybe tie it to an envelope or something else to run a different modulation to the value of this step sequence lane. So now we need to talk, and I'm going to go right here. And now that we have a good example, I'm going to be explaining the continuous mod. So continuous mod, it means that whatever is modulating the value, it's just going to keep modulating until it goes to the next step. Right? So it goes right here, starts modulating, and goes to the next step. Right? So pretty simple. But now, what if I go to the other one, which is going to be the sample and hold? Now, if you don't know how sample and hold works, basically sample and hold will take a snapshot of whatever waveform that is modulating this control, and it's going to just take a snapshot of a part of that. So it's going to be like a randomish part of that, sound. In this case, since we are using an LFO, it's just a bit predictable. Right? But still, it's going to take a snapshot of a single part. So now, instead of modulating up and down, it's going to take a part of that. And notice that every time that we go to 1, the value is going to be different. In this case, since we are using a predictable waveform, just like, the ramp up, the values are not going to go, super crazy. But it goes up and down. And that's how, the sample and hold mod works. You need to kind of use it with something else in order to get, a value to get, to use with the sample and hold. If you're not using anything, the sample and hold, which is work, like this one, the continuous mod. So if you think about this, the random, this one and this one, they kind of belong to the same family. They are just kind of a random values generators. Okay, so let's talk about the master lane. We have some modulations right here. I'm just going to get rid of them. I don't want any modulation. So if I play a key, we are just going to be getting that. Now, if I go right here, of course, this is going to tell us what we are doing, right? Pretty simple. Now, notice that it says also master off. So by default, this is off. So what is the master? So it's like the easiest thing on this kind of a synthesizer. So if I go to master right here, if I go to master, it's going to stand right here. So what we can do, we can turn this on. Now, if it's off, nothing is going to happen. So if I go to shift and notice that it says on, if I turn this on, we will see the main panel or the page of the master. And notice that we can use a preset just like any other, all the other lanes. And right here, it says use master on and then loop duration. Right now, it's giving us subdivisions because the timing is on tempo. If I go to shift and disable the tempo, now the timing lane, the master lane, is going to be in seconds because we are using seconds. Right? Pretty simple. So I'm going to go and, enable the tempo because I like the tempo. I'm going to go to the master lane. And now since it's enabled, this what we'll do, and it's actually super simple. It says loop duration. So this will pretty much loop or control the whole duration of the loop, and it will restart it. And of course, this is going to select, or it's going to decide, this part is going to decide how much time we need to wait until the whole sequence starts over. Right, so I'm going to go back to perform and notice that right here we have a bar now. So this will indicate how much time, of course, we are waiting before the whole loop, the whole wave sequence restarts. That's what the master is. That's the only thing it's going to do. I know it sounds dumb, but that's what it does. And it's actually quite cool. Right now, we are doing a whole, but we can make a much longer wave sequence, and the master will always force all the lanes to restart. Since we are using a whole, we are not doing anything. So if I go enter and go to the master, now maybe you can go right here and just, offset the timings and maybe go back to master. So now this is going to be a bit faster. And notice that it's not letting us move forward. It's just restarting every single time. And this is a cool thing because maybe you're just playing something and what you want to do is to create this thing. So the only thing you need to do is just turn it on and then turn it back off, and it's going to do this. Of course, you can go right here and maybe just kind of modulate it with the time knob, right? And do this trick. So let me go to something, maybe something like that. Maybe something like that. I'm going to go back to perform. And it's just kind of restarting every time we go there. Pretty simple. So this is not like the purpose of the master lane. It's just going to be waiting for an amount of time to restart the whole sequence. So I'm going to be turning off the master lane for now, and I'm going to go back to performance. So we get pretty much the same thing we did earlier. Okay, so I want to kind of show you something that we didn't do, which is this one, the sync notes. So right now, of course, we are using kind of this is a bass. So we are playing one key at a time. So what happens if we do more keys, right? What's going to happen with this sequence? So I'm going to be playing one key. And now I'm going to be playing a second key. And that is what is going on behind the scenes. So we have a disconnection, right? So this works like the voices and the LFO. Remember that when we have many voices, all the LFOs are just kind of following, all the voices are following different LFOs. Well, this is pretty much the same thing, but for the wave sequence. When I play a key, this will, of course, follow whatever it is that we are doing right here. But this one, this voice, is going to restart from its own place. So now we have kind of two sequences on different voices. Yeah, so that's kind of pretty much what it's doing. So that's why we get this mess. Now, what happens if you don't want this, right? Because it sounds a little bit chaotic. So right here, it says sync notes. So this is kind of the way where we can fix this. So if I go right here and I go to sync notes, shift and then select, it's going to say sync notes and on. And right here, you can enable the the master on, the use master. Okay, so now I'm going to play a key. And let me go back to perform. I'm going to play a key. I'm going to be playing a second key. Notice that they don't sound disconnected. So I'm going to go and play a lower C. I'm playing C3. And now I want to play a C 2 octaves higher. So if I play it, notice it. So it's not disconnecting, it's not, getting disconnected to whatever we are doing. Maybe I'm going to go right here so you can see my keys. So I'm playing this, and when I play this, both keys are following the same sequence. That's why it's sync notes. It's syncing whatever it is that we are playing. And both are following the same sequence. So if this one is doing something, at the time that I play this, is going to play it from wherever we are on the sequence. So you're not going to get this kind of a disconnection when you play notes. Now, of course, right now we have a very boring sound. It sounds a little bit better when you have something better. But when you want to play multiple keys and you want all the keys to be synced to whatever sequence that you're doing, you need to go to sync notes. If you don't care about this, you just, of course, turn it off. All right, so now we need to talk about saving and presets. Now, we already talked about this on the first guide, but we talked about saving performances and we talked about saving programs. Now, right now, when you create a wave sequence, you are doing a lot of work right here. Right now, of course, we are not, because we are doing just a 4-step and we are doing something simple. But in real life, you're going to be spending a lot of time creating a cool kind of a shape sequence or a cool pitch or, a sample sequence. It would be a waste if you cannot reuse them later. So this gives you the option to save the sequence, the lanes individually, besides the sequence, the wave sequence or the performance. Yeah, we can. So, okay. So right now, of course, we are on an init performance. What I want to do, I want to save the whole performance. So I'm going to go to type performance. I'm going to go enter and type whatever name. Okay. So this is going to be the name of my performance AB0, just, to select something short. And remember that you need to add the category. I'm going to save it. I don't know, soundscape, whatever. It doesn't matter. Maybe let's go to, user first. I'm going to go right there and you can select the second category. Let's say that this is a bass because it is a bass. And I'm just going to be saving my performance. Remember, you're going to go right there and you need to do shift and right because you cannot overwrite the init performance. Once you're done, there you go. Kaboom, your performance is saved. Right. Now, of course, we are saving the whole thing, the whole performance. What I want to do, I want to store the different things we did right here. I'm not going to go one by one, but we can store one and then use it as something else. Now, how can we use them once we save them? Now, notice that when you go right here to maybe this step and you go right there to the pitch lane, for example, it's telling you right there, you want to use a preset. Which presets do you want to use? And right now, by default, when you start a default kind of a wave sequence, you get the initial pitch lane because, it's the default. But you can store that one as a user pitch lane. And then you can reuse it on, the different patches. That's the whole thing. How can we do this? Okay, so let's say that my shape... let's say that my shape lane, I want to store that one. And then I want to reuse it on some other place. Okay, so I'm going to be going to right. Now, when you go right here at the top, it's going to ask you, okay, so what do you want to save? You want to save a set list. We're going to talk about set list in a minute. You want to save the program, the master lane, the timing lane, and right here you get all the lanes. So in this case, I want to store the shape lane, right? So I'm going to go and select shape lane. And then it's going to ask you, okay, so which shape lane? The layer A, layer B, C, or D? I'm going to use the layer A because we don't have another, different layer. And I'm going to select the name. I'm going to do something kind of obvious. All right, so that's going to be my name, AB0SH for, shape. And of course, you need to go to select your category. And since this is a lane, you don't get the same categories. So when I go and select enter, it's going to say, okay, what is this? Simple, complex, or user? Of course, I'm going to be user and I'm going to go right there. And then the second category, just going to be the same. So in this case, I'm just going to use a simple, not complex. Okay, so that's it. Once you go back, you're going to be able to do right or shift right, of course, shift right. And there you go. So now we are able to save the lane. So how can we use it? So this is actually pretty simple. So let's go back to an initial patch. I'm going to go to an initial performance, right? So we have pretty much nothing. So I know that I have a shape that I want to use. So maybe I'm going to go to a shape right here. And when I go to a shape, I'm going to go right here. We know that we can go to shape and we get by default the initial shape lane. We know this, but I don't want this. I just want my user shape lane. Okay, so I'm going to go enter, and remember that you have your categories right here, and the last one is going to be the user. And there you go. You have your ABSH shape lane. I'm going to select it and done. We are loading our shape. So if I go there, notice that we get our user shape. So whenever you create a lane, you can store whatever is that you did and then reuse it on, maybe different patches. Okay, so let me just go back. Let me go right here, and I'm going to go to user, and I'm going to recover my AB sequence that, we were working with. So right now we are kind of saving different parts on the lanes. We are just saving lanes. But what if you wanted to store the wave sequence, right? We can store performances, we can store programs, we can store lanes, but we could also store wave sequences. And right now, this is just super kind of easy that we know this. Let me just get rid of that away. I'm going to go to the right, and right here at the top, we can go enter, and we have all the way down, we can store the wave sequence. And this again will just store whatever is that we did on all the lanes. It's like the whole wave sequence. So whenever you create a new patch, let me just go right here. Whenever you go there and you select the new wave sequence, you just find the user wave sequence that you created. Right now we have no wave sequence, but you can just, load different wave sequences. All right, so I'm going to go back to an init performance. I'm going to go enter, and we get the dumb init performance that we always get. Now, working with presets, it's really useful. For example, we are on an init performance, but I want to build something. You don't need to build everything from scratch. I'm going to go to sample. We are standing on sample, and I'm going to go to the first one. And if I go to the main panel, we can choose the preset. If I go there, you're just going to need to find something that you want to, that suits you. Maybe I'm going to be using this 5 other unisons. That's, kind of a sounds cool. Now notice that right here, we are just using the 5th sample. All right, so of course, when you bring a preset, you need to learn. And now that you know, of course, how to read everything, what this is doing. The only thing it's doing is just looping the 5th or the 3rd in this case. So, well, we can just loop everything and see what's going on. I'm going to go to the start and then again to the end. And we are just pretty much looping the whole thing. Notice that we have a lot of sounds. Right? So maybe I don't like how it's going, the speed. So I can go to the rate. So I'm going to go to timing. And of course, again, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go back. And I'm just going to find something I like. Okay, so I like that one. And now, if you take a look to the sample, this one, if I go right here, notice it's not looping. It's just kind of doing it, stopping on the last one. So it's because we have repeats off, and I'm going to put an infinite. So now, of course, we're going to get that sound. And this is just using presets. What if we're going to go to pitch and just, again, go right there, go to pitch, and find something I like in terms of presets. And maybe add a little bit of reverb. And there you go, you get a cool sound just by doing nothing. And I'm, using all the black keys so we can, you can see my hand. So that's it. You have a lot of power just using the presets. Just using presets, you can create a million patches and different sounds. And now that you know how to navigate and how how to tweak everything, you can just load a preset and tweak it and just change the sounds or just fit it to whatever it is that you want to do. There's a lot of power in presets, wave sequences, and the patches that you have available. And I'm going to give you my opinion. Now, maybe you don't want it, and maybe you're thinking, yeah, KORG is paying you to do this. No one is paying me to do this. KORG is not paying me to do this. They are not providing this product. No one gave me this product. I bought it with my own money. So this is my honest opinion. This is one of the most inspirational, creative, and fun synths in the market right now. But still, there's one issue with this synthesizer. And this is why I don't call this wave state. I call it the black hole. And it's because it's black, and hole because it's going to suck you into creating sound. So you can spend a lot of time, if you like to create everything from scratch, you're going to spend a lot of time just creating amazing patches. And that is a fun part, but it's time consuming. You need to spend the time. If you don't want to spend time and you just like to get a sound in 5 minutes, well, that's not going to happen. You still need to, invest some time in just creating and just tailoring your sound a bit more, creating a good performance. So that's the issue. The issue is that it's going to be, you're going to spend a lot of time. And the other issue is that you need to learn it. If you don't learn how the controls and how everything works, you're not going to be able to get, more juice out of this. But maybe if you're listening to my conclusion, it's because, you watch everything we did on the first volume and this video, and this is not a problem for you anymore. Okay, so we need to talk about one more thing before we can call it a day, and it's going to be about set lists. So a set list, it's something for performance. So you could assign different performances to the slots that you have right here, to the different kind of steps. In this case, it's going to be called slots. And what you can do, well, maybe you're just playing something and you type a button and it's just going to take you to a new performance. So this is kind of a performance thing, a live thing. Maybe you're doing one sound and maybe the bridge comes in and you just tap something and it's going to take you to the next performance so you can keep playing. Now, by default, you have a set list. If you go to utility, remember that you do have a lot of options on utility. Maybe this is something I'm going to be discussing on the next video because I'm going to be releasing one more with the weird parts. Not the weird parts, but maybe some other parts we didn't talk about, like the utility, like, creating all your own samples, and so on and so on and so on. But if you go to system setup right here, by default, the whole synthesizer is going to be using a set list. And again, a set list is a collection of different performances that you can just tap and go there. Think of this as favorites, right? It's using the favorites one. So you can save your favorite performances and then just toggle between them, and switch them while you're playing. It's a really cool thing. So right now, by default, you get one from factory. Now I've deleted them by default. I get this one. And I just, maybe need to restore the unit, but at this point I don't want to. So this one gives me just one, which is just one. And this is the one you get from factory. And let me just show you how this works. So right now you need to be standing on set lists. If you go to the one, you get your initial performance. I go to 2, same thing. I go to 3, same thing. 4, and now it's changing. Notice that we are changing performances by just tapping the button. So maybe again, you're just... And then you go, and then, I don't know, you go to a different part. So that's the whole idea. While you're performing and doing something, you just tap the different buttons when you're in set lists, and you just change sounds while performing. That's the idea. Now, by default, you get this one, which is, the set list one, or you get the one you get from factory. Now, how can you create set lists? I couldn't find a way of creating an empty set lists set list, I can save one set list, but it's going to be based on this one, and this one has a lot of sounds. So the way I find it easy to do is on the application that you connected to your computer. I'm going to show you right now. Right here you get the editor, but if you go to the librarian, of course you have a way of seeing all the programs, performances, and storing and making the backup and everything else. Maybe I'm going to be, again, covering this on the next video. But right here you have the set lists. Notice that we have one, and this one, it comes from, WaveState. It's like the default one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to right click and create a new set list. Of course, you can go and change the name. I'm just going to call it, I don't know, Wembley. And it's because we're going to be just, playing in Wembley. So I'm going to be, using that set lists. So yeah, when you create a new set list, it's empty. Make sure that you're using the one we created. And if you go through the different, the different slots, is always an init performance. Now you can store up to 64, which is 16 times 4. So you can go right here, right there. It's going to toggle you hold the set list and go to the bank B. Once you're there, it's just going to start flashing, and you select the number 1, and it's going to be the set list or the slot number 1 on the bank B. It doesn't matter if you change performances. It just doesn't matter. You're always going to be standing on the same set list. And this is actually a cool thing, because now maybe you can find the sound. Maybe I'm going to go and use the init performance. That's going to be my 1, right? So that's fine. I'm going to go and load that one. We know how this one sounds, but maybe I want to go to a different performance and find something maybe I can relate to. All right, so I'm going to use that one. That one, I kind of like that one. I'm going to select it. So this one, it's, of course, we're standing on a different performance. So what I want to do, I want to use on this set list, I want to use the one is going to be the init performance, the default patch. But when I go to the number 2, I want to use this. So how can I save this performance to the slot number 2? So when I'm performing, I can just quickly, type the number 2 and change performances. So you're going to go to right, and you're going to need to hold it. Now make sure that the set lists is kind of a, on. If it's off, it's just not going to work. So you need to hold it, and then you need to go to tap the slot where you want to save it. And this is just going to do all the heavy lifting for you. It's going to say, okay, so you want to save a set list slot where? A2. Of course, you can just change this slot right here. But that's it. Once you're done, it says press right to execute, and it says the set list will also be saved. So it's going to save it on your set list. Once you're ready, do you want to confirm? Yes, I want to. So now if I go and we are standing on set lists, I'm going to be playing this, and we are just playing at Wembley, and we are just playing our song, and then suddenly I'm going to be changing sounds. Right? Of course, this sucks, but I believe you get the idea. You can store different performances so you can quickly, change to different sounds while you're performing. Okay, so that's it. So maybe all of this was useful for you. I hope it was. And if you like this, of course, remember to like and subscribe. And if you have the money and maybe you would like to buy me a coffee so I can, maybe keep on doing this, you can. You can go to Patreon and maybe be a 1-month patron. And on the description, you have PayPal. And now you have the YouTube thanks. So you can do that one as well. So that's it, Okay, so hopefully you like all this, and see you on the next one.